about connection between language and cultures.
Yes. And what do you mean? What does that mean? How are they related? How are they connected?
May I answer?
Yes, please, Guli.
Okay. I prepared something, and I'm gonna start with Khaled Hosseini's quote. He said that if culture is a house, then language was the key to front door to all the rooms inside. And without it, he said, you ended up wayward without proper home or legitimate identity. And he's undoubtedly right, because language help us to get know culture, share ideas, human value, as well as realities and behaviors. To be short, we can't have one without other. And with the help of language, we learn and teach culture and tradition. For example, when babies are born, they don't know anything, and we help them to learn something step by step. With action, we say, "Dodeliga assalamu alaikum," or after the lunch, "Ommin qal," like this. And because in our culture, kind of things are matter and essential. And we all have, as an example, we'll have a Russian or Korean friend in our mahalla who also say assalamu alaikum to older people and love pillow more than other food. So it's also connection, I think. And as information, uh, well-known fact is that Uzbekistan is a multi-ethnic country, and more than, if I'm not mistaken, 130 nationalities and ethnic groups live here. And but in order to communicate with other nation, other people, more than as a language, we usually use Russian, and it's also connected with our history, as you know. And we use kind of words himchiska, начинка, and we say чеснок instead of sarımsak, and galstuk instead of boimbach, like this. And as an example, English English people address for girl or woman miss or Mrs. and French madame, Turkish people hanım efendi, but we have other rules associated with our nationality. And our colleague who works with us in the workplace, even their nationality can be Russian or Korean, they also address to our boss like Alishereke or Nadrapa, like this. And but if they go to their own country, I don't think that they call their boss with Ake and Opa. So what I want to say, language is the bridge of culture, and in order to explore the world, there is nothing best than it. And if we want to know what's important to culture, we have to learn other nations' language.
Great, thank
That's
you.
all.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, who said? Who did you say said that metaphor about house and the key?
Holit Husseini.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting metaphor, right? And I was thinking like it can be both ways, and that is the essence of the theory of by devised by Sipper and Worf. You know, if Khaled Hosseini said language is a house and the culture is a key, but it can be vice versa as well. So culture is a house and the language is a key,
Mm.
right? It's both ways of looking at it. So that's what they were saying, cultural linguistic relativity and determinism, right? So it goes both ways, right? So it can be like, on the one hand, language is part of culture. On the other hand, culture is part of language, right? So they're
Cannot
two kind of,
separate.
you cannot separate them. And also it's kind of, you look both ways, right? Whether language influences culture or culture influences language, right? So they are both, they go kind of interrelated, right? They go both ways, not only one way. Yeah. Another thing, when you were saying like, in Galstuk instead of Boyenbao, etc., right? So that is the difference between language and speech,
Mhm.
right? So language is the standard, kind of the language, right? Uzbek language. So if we, in Uzbek language, it's considered like boy and bow, right? But still in speech, right? A speech, yes, right? Speech can be both written and but especially conversational, right? So the spoken speech. So then people prefer to use this kind of language, right? And it is especially also true when, if you remember, like the first lesson, we established that when we mean culture is not about culture of some specific nation, but it can be culture of specific subcultures, right? So like youth or teenagers, right, or etc., right, or subculture of women, men. There are many subcategories, right? So, and then in terms of that, you see that the specific words are belong to specific groups as well, right? Of people, like teenagers' language, slang, right? Speech might be a bit different from the slang or the speech of the elderly people, right? Or the speech of doctors,
Yeah,
right?
there's
Might be a
personality.
bit different, right? So you may not understand what they're referring to, right? Than I don't know, the speech of farmers, let's say, right? So yeah, the differences, yes, they reflect, yeah, not only big cultures but subcultures as well. Um, okay, cool. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Uh,
Any reflections of the last lecture?
Yes, I am without examples, but I also have overall opinion what we had last time in our class. So, of course, the more we know about the, for example, cultural background of the language, and the faster we learn that language. For example, that's why their language and culture are, as we said above, they're inseparable, yes? And for example, if we learn any language, if you want to learn any language, it's essentially important to know about the culture of the people who speak in that language. And uh, for example, and understanding of their culture is their integral part uh, of of that culture.
Yeah.
That's why they are inseparable,
Interrelated.
connected with each other.
Yes, interrelated. Yes, they are
Yeah, interrelated.
absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you. Gulru, you were not here last time, right? Were you not? Gulru, can you understand us?
Gülruh,
Buyurun.
Gülruh.
اشتريت موازين
O'tganda sizda bor edi.
yo'q narsa yo'q edimku
Yo'q,
Ha, ha, ha.
o'sha so'ra. Okay. Tushunarli bo'ldimi? Qisqacha o'tgan safar nima haqida gaplashganimiz? Til va
Yes.
madaniyat. Okay, great. So we stopped when we were talking about politeness across cultures, right? Saying so different languages use different forms to use politeness, right? So
Yeah.
in English, so they heavily rely on like please, thank you, sorry, right? And they use them quite often.
Mm.
Or these modal verbs like could you, would you mind, right? Etc. Yeah, I'm saying some people really find it strange, odd, when, you know, they say thank you to the bus driver, for example, right? It's yeah, kind of that. So we'll talk about in general about some we briefly will talk about, yeah, so mainly last time we talked about verbal communication, right? What words are reflected in culture, right? Or yeah, or what words reflect culture, or how culture is reflected in words. So this is verbal communication, right? The words, what we say. But also there is a non-verbal type of communication, right? Gestures, glances, changes in the tone, right? All the thing, what we say, paralanguage, right?
Yes.
What do you think, how much of our message, how non-verbal is important when you're saying something? Which one is more important when you're saying something? What you say, the words you say, or your non-verbal communication, like your facial expression, your gestures, your tone, intonation, pitch? Which one do you think is kind of more important?
Nadrapa, emotions are also non-verbal communication. We can say this. Yeah.
Yes,
Emotion
showing your emotions, yes. Right, because emotions get internal, right? So, but the way you show them, yes, they are non-verbal.
It's very essential because sometimes it isn't just enough to say words, because every people can say something, yeah, in order to explain, in order to say something, but with emotion, with body language, with action, we can understand how how to say,
Yeah.
живой bo'ladi. Ifoda qilish живой bo'ladi. Ta'sirchanlik bo'ladi. То есть oddiy ifoda etgandan ko'ra emotsiya odam yuzidagi ifoda bilan ko'proq nima demoqchiligini biz tushunib ola olamiz. Qanchalik to'g'ri yoki nohaq, qanchalik aldayapti yoki to'g'ri aytyapti.
To'g'ri. Muloqotning masalan foiz jihatdan oladigan bo'lsak, necha foizi so'zlar bilan ifodalanadi, necha foizi nonverbal?
Non-verbal juda ham ko'p foizni tashkil qiladi, Nadir opa.
Masalan,
chunki ko'p holatda masalan biror kishiga biror narsani aytgan paytimiz ko'proq emotsiya bilan aytamiz. Ichidagi nima bilan, keyin qo'ldagi harakatlar bilan ifodalashga harakat qilamiz. Ili eye contact bo'ladi, ko'zga qarab ham ko'p narsani o'sha tushunib olish mumkin.
So yeah, okay. How much percent? Give me some estimate number.
Maybe 65-70%, maybe.
Non-verbal.
Yes, non-verbal.
Okay. More than verbal, right?
Yes, more than verbal.
I think 40%.
40 non-verbal, 40. Okay. Guldru, do you want to say your bet?
Я думаю, что невербальному можно отнести 80%, наверное, из всего, а к вербальному 20%, наверное. Одну и ту же фразу можно по-разному передать, опираясь на жест, на эмоции, например, зависит от того, как человек себя ведет, наверное.
Okay, great. So yeah, the research done by Dr. Albert Mehrabian, yeah, that's a very famous in intercultural communication. So it says only 7% of our communication is verbal. So only 7% what we want to say, we say with words. Other percentages, yeah, other than 93 is kind of all non-verbal. But among that, if you divide it, so like 55 is gestures and facial expressions, etc. But 38%, they are kind of also vocal elements, but they are also kind of non-verbal, right? So they are pitch, tone, rate, volume, intonation, rhythm, etc. So what the research shows is actually how we say something is much more important than what we say.
Yeah.
Right? As Gurdjieff said, yeah, the same kind of word or phrase we can say differently, and we may express different meaning, right? Even that, right? Depending on our tone or pitch or rate, or with what facial expression we say that, right? Yeah, so we will, this is the last kind of thing that we'll talk about, kind of verbal thing. One of the, I think, salient features when you see like the language and culture, interrelationship is also, or the behavior that is kind of visible is in the small talk. Do you know what is small talk?
Kichik suhbat, shu bilan fikrni boshlash mumkin, yes? Short,
Yeah.
like short conversation.
Right. Yes, it's conversation about nothing, right? So, but we use it to break the ice, right? To break the ice, or just to show that we're polite, right? It's
Вежливость, да.
in English-speaking countries, so you're expected to do small talk, right? For example, when you're in the elevator with a stranger, or with your neighbor, for example, right? Or you meet someone, right? And or you're waiting at the bus stop, or yeah, anywhere, right? So small talk, right? So an English-speaking country, so they are kind of, they love doing that, and it is kind of a must. You are expected to do that. It's a form of politeness as well. Whereas it's not the same as in other cultures. Having students from different parts of the world, that really surprises me, that how some cultures are kind of asocial. So that surprises many people, you know, when they come to England or Canada, or that people, you know, talk to each other, strangers talk to each other. In many countries, people don't talk to each other if they are strangers, you know. Even like, you know, I think people like Russians living in Uzbekistan, they got used to Uzbek culture, right? So, and I think in Uzbekistan, we also do small talk. And I think our small talk is kind of longer than in English-speaking countries, right? They can be really long, right? Whereas, like, for example, in Russia, so people coming from Russia, so they're really surprised by saying, why people talk to each other, like why he or she is a stranger and why they talk to me, right? So that's one thing, right? Another thing is that it's cultural, is which topics are accepted as a small talk and which ones are not. So
As a small talk.
right, so weather, right? So the most common one, I think, if cultures have that, so it's weather, right? So is it acceptable topic in Uzbekistan?
I think no. It's mostly in European countries. They're much interested about this. In our country, no. We shouldn't begin. No.
But we started our lesson. We started with weather, right? You said, "Oh, it's cold. What about?"
Because
so
yes, but we know the language, and we are interested in their culture, and we know that they began for example, topic to warm, in order to warm. Yes.
Warm up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Warm
Well,
up.
not literally warm. Yes, just warm up, but break the ice, right? So the same we did, right? We started the lesson, and I usually start saying, "Oh, how is the weather?" Right? So that's usual topic. And I think in Uzbekistan as well, I think we always comment about weather. We say, "Oh, like soğuk gitti or gitti,"
Yeah.
right? So like, yeah, we're also never happy with the weather, right? So, it's raining a lot, or it's not raining, right? So like, yeah, we always comment about weather as well. And because in Uzbekistan also weather changes, I mean, we have 4 seasons, and yeah, and I think people talk about weather quite a lot in Uzbekistan too, and it is acceptable, right? You can talk about the weather. I talked about weather, and you talk about weather to anyone, right? With a taxi driver
Oh,
and everyone, right? So you talk about
yeah.
weather.
Yeah.
And in yeah, English speaking countries, yes, it's perfectly acceptable. It's not that they love talking about, yeah, they kind of, that's it's natural, right? So the same in like in Uzbekistan, right? So this is what we say. Or yeah, or it is something that you say when you don't know what to say, right? So
Mm.
to kind of break the ice, to be polite. Whereas if you remember the TED talk that I recommended you, the single story,
Mm.
and she said that like, now all my characters also like talked about weather,
Weather,
although like in Nigeria we never talk about weather, right? Because it's quite hot all year round, right? There are cultures when they have like the climate that doesn't change, so they don't talk about weather much, right? But I think in Uzbekistan it's perfectly all right. Yeah, and we do that. News, is it acceptable topic?
Yeah.
Uh, yes, it
Nowadays,
can
yes.
be.
Nowadays,
Mhm.
yes. Because
Mhm.
everywhere we can face with news, and people like to discuss what's happened yesterday,
Right.
what's gonna be
Yes. Mhm.
on Facebook, or
Yes.
face to face. It doesn't matter. They just
Mhm.
discuss about the news,
Right. Mhm.
and
What about? Mhm.
it's also good because people um, started to interest more than their nima deydi maishiy narsalardan ko'ra ko'proq narsaga qiziqishni boshlagani. It's good.
Okay. What about political news or just politics? Is it acceptable topic?
I don't. I think that in order to discuss political news, people have to be informed about this. But nowadays, our people just take something from context, catch, and they start to discuss it without knowing full text, full meaning.
Mhm.
I think it's bad.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So political news or politics is not a safe topic, right? So yeah, it's not a small talk,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you can debate, you can kind of, right, but it's not a small talk. You don't you shouldn't do that with the strangers, right? For example, and with a taxi driver, right?
Yeah.
So like when you have 5 minutes to discuss that, right? So it's not small talk. And the same in English speaking countries. So people do not discuss politics, right? Because people might have different views.
Yeah.
So it might be unsafe, right? So you might get into trouble with discussing, your opinion might be different from the other person, right? And because it's not, as I said, it's not a debate, right? It's not that you're having talk show about some political issue or it's not a specific place to discuss that, right? It's not for topic or small talk, sure. Yeah, but others news, yes, they can be great, like I don't know, COVID-19, right? So like I don't know, right? So some other kind of news. Okay, age, asking about somebody's age, is it
Yeah.
acceptable in Uzbekistan? The
Yes.
stranger.
It's
What about?
okay.
I think
Ask.
mm,
our country.
Right? What do you
No,
think
it
in
can be
English-speaking countries?
in English-speaking countries.
Can you ask about somebody's age?
Um,
Person
It's,
who you don't know?
I don't
I
see.
think for English countries, it's not much more polite, yes?
Mm-hmm.
But in Uzbekistan, most people ask their age. How old are you? For example, oh, you look old. You look how to say? Yoshroq ko'rinasiz.
Yeah.
Young, younger than. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's also a form of politeness that to say, even if it is not true, right? Saying, "Oh, yes, yes, yeah." Yeah, it's not appropriate to ask about age in English-speaking countries, right? So, and you have to be careful with that, right? When you're in a foreign country, right?
Yeah.
And because you remember we talked about like bias, prejudice, right? So it might be a form of discrimination. Ageism is also one of the types of discrimination, right? Yeah, it's perfectly right to ask that in Uzbekistan. And one of the reasons why we ask is because we have higher respect for older people, right? So we want to show our respect because, as we said, it's more hierarchical culture, right? So we have to know where we stand. And also it depends which language we choose, right? Do we say aka opa, right? Or hola, or do we use like lar or not, right? Sis, san, right? Choosing this form, right? TV, right? So yeah, for that in Uzbek culture, they ask about age, right? But in English speaking countries, so they don't have that kind of distinction in the language, right? Depending on age. So and they don't ask, so it's not polite to ask about somebody's age. So related to that marital status, are you married? And then having children, do you have any children? So are these acceptable questions in Uzbekistan to ask as a small talk?
Yes.
Yes, it's accepted.
People
Acceptable questions.
Yeah.
people have to ask about kind of things.
Yes. What about in English speaking countries?
No, I think.
I think they're not much interested. They can ask it after if you too close, yes, in English speaking others, then you can discuss this. But in our countries, if you are not close, not much close, they discuss it anyway. Because our country is people are so interested in people's life. They want to learn a lot about that person in a short period of time.
Yes. Yeah, in English speaking countries, it's not acceptable to ask whether you are married or whether you have children, right? The person, if he or she mentions himself or herself, then yes, you can talk about them, right? So he's saying, yes, I'm married, I'm my wife, right? Or my partners, or right? So then you can kind of pick up and continue that conversation, right? So, but you cannot ask kind of these kind of questions, right? And yeah, in Uzbekistan, they really love asking these questions, you know, and even more, you know, if you say, no, I'm not married, they will say, why? Why not?
Why?
Or like, do you have children?
Yeah.
No, why?
Уже baktı.
Right.
Yes.
Or if you say, yes, I have one, so why not two, right? When is the next one? Right? Yes. So it's probably because it's a collectivistic culture, right? So we live in communities, so right, we live kind of with others, right? So the norms are, everybody's expected to follow the same norms, right? The same standards, right? So the norm is that people have to get married in their like when they are like 20s, right? And that they are expected to have children, right? At least two, three, right? So kind of this is kind of a norm, right? What's now, and then if somebody does not conform to the norm, people find it strange, right? So and they think that they ought to give some advice, right, to another person how to live, right? So yeah, it's just that culture, right? Whereas in individualistic cultures, right, so this is these are two personal questions, right? So it's up to them to decide, right? So they might say, you know, it's none of your business, because they are very personal questions, right? Yeah, but it's up, of course, it's if the person shares, it's perfectly all right, right? So then, but you cannot ask, or of course you cannot judge saying why you're not married, or why you know why you don't have children, right? And it becomes really difficult to understand for some people, right? So in Uzbekistan especially, you know, like to understand why, for example, a man who is 40 and is not married, you know, so kind of, you know, becomes cognitive dissonance, right? Say, how come, right? How come you're not, why he's not married, right? Or like a pair, they do not have any medical conditions and they decide to be child free, so they don't have children. And it might be really difficult to kind of understand that, right? Not even accept, but just understand that, right? So but just we have to understand that people are different, cultures are different, right? So trying not to judge others is the key, kind of to be to have effective intercultural communication. um Sports, do you think, is it an acceptable topic for conversation?
Acceptable for men,
Yes,
women,
of course.
because our women not interested in sports much
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
in Uzbekistan, I mean.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But sportsmen can talk about it.
Yeah. Well, there are some women, yes, as of course not
Not much.
majority,
I
yes,
know.
but there are some women who are really interested in. I have several um, acquaintances who are really interested in soccer, for example, football, right? So and they follow all these world news, the sports news, right? And they discuss them. Yeah, it's acceptable topic, right? So both English speaking and Uzbekistan, right? But you have to be careful, as again, right? So like making sure, like say, who are you fan of, right? It shouldn't be kind of arguing about, oh, like I don't know, Barca is the best
Real.
or Real Madrid is the best, right? So not going to
Or
debate,
Habib
right?
or
But
Maghreb.
yeah, but kind of, yeah, as a small talk is acceptable, right? Or like in Turkey, people are also kind of obsessed with football or soccer, right? In and they take it too personally sometimes, you know, when you discuss like, oh, you know, like who won, right? If some of their favorite team lost, you know, that might also lead to misunderstandings, because they are kind of passionately talk about it. Yeah, it's for, like, by the way, politics, right? We said in some cultures it's perfectly all right to talk about it as a small talk, and people love, I think in Turkey as well, they love talking about politics. Greeks, they love talking about politics all the time. Yeah, so there are some cultures we prefer, like they love talking about some stuff. Movies, acceptable or not?
It's also depend up to people. For
Mm-hmm.
example, I like to discuss or talk about movie. But my friend, if she doesn't know about kind of movie, I cannot.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course, all the topics, right? Yeah, it
I
depends. Yeah, the second
In,
one.
in order to communicate, in order to talk about kind of thing, it should be common.
Yes, of
uh,
course, it should be common interest, right?
I I also agree with this, and movies like books, they're good. One of the good conversation, and as Guli said, the person, for example, in order to speak in this topic, the person should be aware of the latest news in order to discuss about this. Yes,
Right,
it
yes,
should be common
right,
between
yes, of
two
course.
persons
Right.
like this.
Yes, of course. Yes, it's safe topic, right? You can bring up movie, right? And then if the other person doesn't know, she says, "Oh, sorry, I haven't watched it." And then yeah, you can say, "Okay, I really recommend you watching it," right? So or like,
Okay.
"Oh, don't watch it," right? That's it. Yeah, you can finish it like that as well. But it is acceptable topic to it's a safe topic to talk, right? Both Uzbekistan and English speaking countries, and I think everywhere else as well. People love talking about movies, right? Depending, yeah. For example, again, Turkey, they love these TV series and they talk about them all the time. I have a friend who lives there in Turkey. She's married to a Turkish guy and she lives there how many? More than 15 years, I think. And then yeah, I remember the first time she went there and she was so surprised, saying, "Oh my god, they are like obsessed with these TV series, like they have TV series and then they have talk shows right after each episode, on TV, and they sit and they discuss that episode every time, like saying every day, like the whole TV, like saying, she was saying like 15 years ago. I don't know how it is now, but yeah, people love talking about that. And it might be some kind of new TV series, right? Everybody is talking about, right? Can be salary. How
Oh,
much do you earn? Do
it
you think?
isn't polite to ask kind of thing, but Uzbek people love to ask, how much
Mhm.
salary do you get?
Yes, right.
um, Even you don't know the people, they can ask from you,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
how much is your salary?
Right. Right. Salary is one of the topics that is asked in Uzbekistan, right? Although I think it's changing, right? So like it's still nowadays people feel more and more uncomfortable when they are asked about their salary. I think nowadays in Uzbekistan, right? Not everybody wants to answer that question. I think it's connected with this during Soviet Union, the salaries were standardized. Everybody would have the same kind of salary, right? Like the teacher's salary is this, right? So no matter what, like how many years you work, or no matter where you work, right? So it would be the same, right? Or like the engineer's salary is this, right? So this everything was kind of standard, right? And people would know, right? Everybody would know how much this person, like this position, like earns, right? Whereas nowadays, it's so different, right? So different teachers might get different salaries, right? So and other people, right? So therefore, and many people, like they say, yeter, or cam, right? So I think most people nowadays just
Kunumuz otwatta.
yes, sekin bolada, right? So people feel uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Answering this question nowadays, I think more and more, and it's considered to be impolite, right? Kind of not very polite to ask this kind of questions, right? But as I said, so it had this kind of historical and cultural um, thing, right? But I think what people love really asking is like elder people asking about their pension, how much they earn. I think in Uzbekistan, wherever you go, like if you see like two people, like two retired people, they would say, "Oh, pensi is qancha," and they love. Pardon me?
I think it's not appropriate to ask such kind of questions.
Oh no, the pensioners, they love discussing that. They don't feel uncomfortable. They love that. Yes. Salaries, people don't like answering that, right? But pension, I think that's my observation. Maybe it's not true, but people love discussing their pension, and they say, "Oh, kopolar can," because there is not much difference in the pensions, right? So therefore, kind of, yeah, they're different, and maybe 100,000 to, but you know, they love discussing that. You say, "Oh, kopolar cancers or kamolar can." So yeah, they love discussing that. Yeah. What about weekend plans? Like, what are you doing for weekend? What's your plans for the weekend?
It's also good. It's also, I think, kind of small talk, because everyone loves weekends, and I think they enjoy to discuss such kind of topics, because everyone want to relax, spend time with family, friends, yes, and I think that it will be good conversation also for small talk.
Do you think in Uzbekistan people ask like, "Odok kunun makmoqchisiz? Yakshanba kuni nima qilasiz?" Do you think taxi drivers will ask you, for example?
No taxi drivers.
Strangers, I mean strangers. We're talking about small talk, right? Can be the same with strangers, like, or shop cashier. Do you think he will ask you?
No.
No.
Nadrapa, may I answer to this
yes,
question?
Please.
You ask, it's Mahgul mentioned that it's good, and she's undoubtedly right, but in our country, not all people have plans for weekend. Because bitta oddiqda ishim qilib deydi. Plansiz yashaydiganlar ko'p. То есть uy bekalari uy ishlari bilan qiladi. Ular plan qilishga, magazinga borishga, o'ziga qarashga vaqti bo'lmasligi mumkin. Bolalarini kirini yuvish kerak, maktabga tayyorlash kerak. Hamma emas, but majority, I can say.
Right. Yes. Okay.
That's why in our country, I don't think so. But in European countries, it's okay, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good observation. Yes, in Uzbekistan, people usually don't make plans, right? First of all, yes. So they say they wake up and then they decide what to do in most cases, right? Yes. So maybe that's why it is. I think, yeah, for me as well. Like, you know, first, although like I live in different countries, and I knew about culture quite a lot. But when I came to Canada, and then I went to a bank to open a bank account, and then like I was in the bank teller kind of at the end, he said, "Oh, what's your plans for the weekend?" And I was like kind of shocked, and I was looking at him like and thinking, you know, is he flirting with me, and why he wants to know, you know, what am I doing on my weekend? Because it's totally inappropriate, right? You would never. I said like, wow, that struck me that time, you know. In Uzbekistan, we ask about age, marriage, children, but we never ask about what you're doing on the week, on Sunday, right? The strangers will never ask you, right? So like, what's your plans for the weekend, right? Or after the weekend, right? So for example, on Mondays, people always ask each other, you know, "Oh, how was your weekend?" I think in Uzbekistan, people never ask, right? So like, you may ask the people who you know, right? But you will not ask other people, right? So it's kind of impolite. I think it's too personal, I think, so to ask what's your plans for the weekend, right? So like, why do you want to know, right, what I'm doing on the weekend? So yeah, so what I wanted to say is that the topics, right, what we discussed might be different, and we have to be careful, right? There are some safe topics that are kind of acceptable in all cultures, right? Like weather. That's probably weather. Weather is the safest, therefore people choose that, you know. Other things might not be that safe, right? You might get into trouble, right? Because the other person might have different opinion than yours, right? So you have to be careful with that. But yeah, therefore people say like stick to the weather, you know. And then yeah, what it says people love talking about is just not that they love, it's just it's very safe topic, right? And then yeah, in the Middle Ages, the British, the people, kind of the ladies were said that, like, you know, there was a discrimination of, you know, gender discrimination, and they thought women usually tend to be uneducated and they should not express their opinion. So they would say like ladies should stick to the topic about whether when they talk with men, so they should talk only about weather, so that, you know, because they thought they don't have they are not educated enough to talk about other things with men. Yeah, you have to be careful what topics to talk, and try to kind of find out the culture, right? What they usually talk about with others, right? Other appropriate ones might be just if you see their child, for example, right, or pet, you can compliment them, right? Saying, oh, cute baby, like saying, right? So that's also kind of acceptable in all cultures. Or asking like, oh, have you been waiting long? For example, if you're in a bus stop, right, waiting for an elevator, right? You can start conversation like that. Or are you new to the neighborhood, right, etc. Yes, people like, if in different countries they like asking like where are you from, right? Although like I find sometimes people find it insulting as well, you know. Yeah, here in Canada everybody asks, but some people they get offended when you ask. I'm from Canada. I said, okay, you know that you're, or people will sometimes say, like, we're all from Canada, but where are you? Like, where are your origins, right? What's your country of origin? Right? Because, yeah, because there are many people who've been living here for many years and they've been naturalized, they got citizenship, but still kind of their background is different. Okay, now nonverbal communication is studied by proxemics, haptics, oculesics, and kinesics. I thought it's kinesics. Kinesics, I would say. Okay, so all these Latin words. Any guesses? What do you think proxemics means?
I guess acrylics with eye.
Okay, yeah, that's a great guess. From the word oculist, right? Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Any other guesses? Proxemics. Do you know the word proximity? No. Okay, proxemics studies the space that people feel it's necessary to set between themselves. You see you hear the police cars? Set between themselves and others as they vary in different social settings and between different social groups or cultures. So this study of space in interpersonal relationships, right? How much space do we need, right? Some cultures, they really love coming too close to you when they are talking, even when it is a stranger. Other cultures prefer standing
Keep a distance.
far, right? Keeping the distance, right, from you. Yes, nowadays with this COVID-19, social distancing became a thing right now. Everybody is expected to follow 2-meter social distancing, right? And for some cultures, it's really strange. For other cultures, it's okay, right? So if you are there are kind of, if you're too close, for many cultures, that's intimate zone, right? Only your loved ones can enter this zone, right? Being too close to you, right? So others are expected to be kind of this ideal distance anyway, right? If it is stranger, right, you would expect him or her to be at least 2 meters apart, right? So like, or 3 meters apart from you, right? And especially in Uzbekistan, for example, I think the distance when you're men and women, you tend to take longer distance, right? If it is a stranger, men and women. So if even if it is not stranger, you they take a longer distance, right? They, when you're talking to the opposite gender, right? Whereas like in other cultures, so they don't have that, right? The difference between men and women, right? And then if you're staying there, they may consider that's also impolite when you're too far, kind of, right? So there is a kind of the different cultures define that space differently. So that's the thing. But yeah, but did I put it here? Ah, yes, okay. Sorry. Yes, so this is kind of universal based on the mainly Anglo-Saxon culture, right? So very close. This is 7-15 centimeters, right? So that's private zone, right? So it's close, right? So neutral would be, yes, 1.5 meters or 2 meters, right? So that would be the neutral zone, right? So you can use your full voice and non-personal information, right? But if you're talking to a group, then you're expected to be like at least 2.5 or like up to 6 meters, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, there was this meme, in some cultures, and I think it was in the this Ricardo TED talk about cross-cultural communication, right? So many Scandinavian cultures, they tend to take this kind of distance, right? Even before pandemics, right? So they would never come close to you, right? So yeah. Whereas some other cultures, yeah, they find it kind of okay to enter your private zone, right? They want to be close to you. Yeah, but that's a kind of a not very good thing to do, right? Even if it is in your culture, you have to be aware that majority of people might not find it comfortable, right? So this is also kind of cultural, depending where you stand. Or also the offices, right? How offices are organized, whether they sit together or they sit in a separate room, right? So this is also kind of all cultural and can be culture of the organization as well, right? So they might also differ, right? So there was lately this trend in the Western world, these open space offices, I don't know what are they doing now with these pandemics. I think everybody again will have their cubicles or things like the separate rooms, right? So yeah, it's changed completely, I think, nowadays, how we understand the office kind of layout, right? Acceptable norm. Haptics, that's touch and tactile sensations. So the study of touch. So like how much you're allowed to touch others, right? So there are some cultures that you're not allowed to touch somebody, right? So low contact cultures, right? So you're not allowed to touch North Americans, the British, China, especially China, Japan, right? You would never kind of touch somebody, right? Whereas like in North American, British, they would do the handshake, right? But in even China, Japan, they don't even do that, right? So they just bow, right? So you don't do that. Or like in majority of Muslim cultures, men and women, they are kind of, they will never shake hands, right? So that's also the how much you're allowed to touch somebody. Whereas there are lots of high cultures like Italians, French, it's just even Russians. So Arabs and Latin Americans, especially Latin Americans, I think they love touching each other, kissing, even strangers. Yeah, I have I have many students from Latin America and Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, all these countries, Argentina. So they even if it is a strange, like they say that if they come to a classroom, they have to kiss every person in the classroom every day.
Oh.
If you see them like 3 times, you will kiss them 3 times, like yes, that they do that. And I remember I had one guy and he was so young and he was saying like, every time I come to class, I want to kiss, but then and I like keep myself saying, don't do that, don't do that. But I feel so bad about it. It feels like I'm rude, It was so difficult for him to accept that, that he's not allowed to kiss his classmates every day. It's not that because he kind of that he had some other intentions. No, it's just that it's in so much in his culture that he is impolite. It's in their culture not to kiss somebody, Yes, so they say like they come to the party and they don't know somebody saying, hi, this is Helen, this is Anne. Okay, they would kiss each other. This is the first time they see each other, they would kiss. There are cultures that and I think in Uzbekistan we also have that, right? So like I think it's getting less, but correct me if I'm wrong, but not strangers, of course, right? But distant relatives, yes, right? You only go to some place and say, so they touch each other, right? Still, right? So like, so that they hug each other, women, right? Yes, exactly. So it might be difference, as you said, yeah, between men and women, right? And it exists in all cultures. Yes, how, whether men and men kiss or not, men and women to women, right? What are these interactions, right, happening? Yes. And yes, it's very cultural, right? So have to be and in Russian, so I guess why they put it, yeah, they also kiss. Handshake is quite common, right? Or it's okay kind of when you touch somebody and they say, okay, let me help you, and then you would just grab somebody's hand and walk him or her, right, for example. Whereas yes, in many British Anglo-Saxon cultures, you are not kind of allowed to touch somebody, right? So yeah, you have to be really, really careful. So make sure that you don't touch anybody, right? So yeah, and I think these are kind of rules becoming kind of universal kind of rules, right? So saying people have to be careful, right? So have to understand whether they are allowed or not. Oh, in Arab, so I used to live in Egypt, and yeah, they loved to kiss kids, children. strangers. So they, oh, like they see a child, so they kiss. And I think in Turkey as well, so they love kissing children. That really irritated me as well, you know. So why they're kissing my child, you know, I don't know them, right? Yes, so there are cultures like that. Yes, as you said, Aculisics studies the use of the eyes, right? The eye contact, right? So in China and Japan, people avoid looking at each other in public places or in a crowd. What about in Uzbekistan? How much eye contact do we do?
Yes.
Bizda unchalik emas menimcha. Chunki ko'ziga tik qaramaydi deydi-ku.
It depends on the age, right? So if you're talking to an elder person, you're expected to lower your eyes gaze, right? So not to have a direct eye contact, right? Yeah, a person who has higher status than you, right? Not only elder, maybe boss, right? So as well, right? Or you're, I don't know.
Man.
Yes, and men and women, right? Women when talking to men, right? So they are expected, or men to women also, right? So they don't look directly in the eye, right? Whereas in English-speaking countries, if you are not looking in the eye, you are being disrespectful. So that means you are not listening to them. And therefore, even like when you're making presentation, right, or on a job interview, like saying that you have to look in the eye, right, so that you show that you're interested in what the other person is saying. Yeah. Yes, in many cultures, yes, it's considered to be disrespectful or intimidating. Yes. And it is interesting this, if you remember, we talked about this cultural imperialism, you know, or imposition. And yeah, many of these Europeans and mainly this Anglo-Saxon culture that imposed this eye contact, right? And therefore in all these public presentations, public speaking manuals and job interviews, tutorials, they will always say like, have a direct eye contact, right? So it's kind of, they are trying to influence the whole global culture, right? Saying so they should have the direct eye contact, right? Another thing is kinesics, the study of body movements, right? Gestures, facial expressions.
Body language.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, the other things also can, they refer to body language, right? In general. So, you know, the eyes and everything, right? But these are the rest, all the rest kind of gestures, right? So what we use with body, like hands and so, yeah, in distinctive gestures, we do them unconsciously, right? There are universal emotions that exist, that innate to human beings, right? Like happiness, sadness, anger, right? So, so this kind of emotions, right? And we do them unconsciously, right? There are some universal gestures, right, that we all understand. For example, patting the stomach with the hands means I'm hungry, right? Or rubbing the hands together, like, or like doing that, right? So that means it's cold, right? Or it's cozy. There are some coded gestures or technical gestures that are used by specific subcultures, right? So TV directors might use certain gestures, right? Teachers or students may use some certain gestures, right? Then acquired gestures, so they are others, so they are socially generated, right? So the things that you learn in your kind of social environment. So the ultimate gesture is this yes or no, right? So in many cultures, yes, it's yes, we nod, right? In some cultures, that means no, right? So like in Indian culture, that means no, right? So this would be, or Bulgaria, I guess. So this would be yes in some cultures, but yeah, so you cannot rely on that as well, right? You cannot kind of assume that if you make like this, that everybody understands that it is yes, right? Because in some cultures it might be the opposite. So therefore you have to use the words, right? Not only
For
the
example,
gesture.
Turkish people, in order to say no, they do like this. No.
Okay. Yes.
Uzbek do like this, but Turkish no.
Yes, exactly, right? And if they say like that, they will understand, but you know, the strange foreigners will not understand what they want to say, right? So yeah, they cannot rely on only the gesture sometimes, right? So they may not understand what you want to say. Yeah, or like okay gesture, right? Except that exists in many cultures. So the victory sign, right? Finger beckoning, touching a child on the top of the head, pointing at an object. Yeah, linking your pinky with someone else pinky. Yeah, okay. Had some, yeah, kind of, I want to do this. I'll come back to that. So what do you think this means?
When people lie, do that like this.
They like?
No, lie. Yolg'on gapirayotganida.
Ah, okay. Okay. That means you're lying.
It's
What
similar.
else? Any other guesses? How would you understand if somebody makes that? Yes, it means to wish good luck. In some cultures, it means good luck. What about this gesture?
Turkish people do this in order to say if food delicious, they say it's so delicious, kind of action.
Like beautiful, but, right?
Yeah,
delicious. Something they really like, right?
In our country, it isn't good.
It's a negative gesture, right? Yes. Yeah, that's
keep silent. Keep silent.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, when I used to live in Egypt, yeah, they'd also use that, and that's also exactly they use it. They say sabr, right? The same in Uzbek, right? So they look like they make it like this and say sabr. Oh, that's but it has the same meaning in Uzbek, right? But it has a very negative connotation, right?
Yes.
In Arab culture, they use it, and it is kind of neutral. It's positive, it's saying sabr, so like saying be patient. They would do that. Oh, that's really all. It was so hilarious for us first time. So you know, because traffic. Imagine the traffic. You know, they don't have traffic lights in most cases. Then they would just make it like that, and they would just cross the road. You know, and all the cars will stop. You know, they would show that to the cars, and everybody would stop. You know, I said like, yeah, it has the same meaning in Uzbek, but it's not impolite in Egypt, whereas it's very impolite in
People can argue after that.
Uzbekistan, right? Yes. In Italy, it means what is this, or what do you want? Congo means a small amount of something. Yes, in Turkey, it's something beautiful or well, right? have to be really careful, right? So with these gestures as well. This
Oh,
sign?
all right. It's
Mhm.
okay.
Okay.
All is fine. It's me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay in most cultures, right? Although like in Brazil, if you sign it turned upside down, it's considered to be rude in Brazil. In some cultures, this means just zero.
Zero, yes.
Thumbs up.
The same.
Mhm.
It's all right.
Yes. Yes. In most, it's a sign of rose, something good, right? Yeah, and that they would say something bad, so like that, right? Thumbs down, right? Yeah, I think that's kind of universal. I don't know whether people might have problems with this or not. Yeah, what about this one? Chin flick, doing like that.
Like,
So in France, Belgium, Tunisia, it says express supreme disinterest. So saying that I get lost, so I don't understand, I don't follow you. And Italy means I'm not interested. So I don't give a damn, right? It might have a different meaning of that as well. This one,
Is it true?
yeah, V sign.
Victory.
Yes.
And Russian geçiyorken основной.
Yes, right. So like,
Yeah.
you can do this like this, right?
Yes.
Or this. So that might be the also difference, you know, which way they show. If it is US, this one is harmless, but in some cultures, if they use it like this, might be inappropriate, right? And I think this is like the people put it like that, right? So it's also kind of not very pleasant thing, right? So like, kind of, yeah, have to be careful with that too. What about, yeah, this one?
in our country to in order to call someone, yes.
Would you feel comfortable if somebody calls you like that?
No. For it's only for our children, for the people who are too close, but young, not for older.
Okay, yeah, in some countries come here, right? Yes, but in some, yes, so in some countries it's highly offensive. Then you can use these for dogs, right? Not for human beings, right? Yeah, and I think in Uzbekistan also kind of controversial, right? So not everybody might like that, right? So the safer would be like this, right? So, or not using gesture at all, right? So or like say in the restaurants, right? So it's nowadays it's also impolite to call a waiter like that, right?
Yeah,
they say just look at him and that's it, right? Not, he's not a dog, right? For you to do that, right? Yeah, again about Egypt, yeah, so they would call it like psst, psst. Oh, that irritated us so much. Why is calling me like a cat or dog, right? So yeah, they would call it psst, psst. That's the way they would call people, you know. Like, oh, Karavar, that's also right. So yeah, they might be different. Okay, this sign.
In order maybe to show the sides, left, right, like this.
Also, Muslim people show
Point.
this kind of action
Yeah,
only
point.
الله يدينا
Oh,
قيام
okay.
السم.
Yeah, that's a great, interesting one. Yeah. Yeah, it's using as a pointer, whether you are allowed to use your finger, index finger, right, to point something, right?
Yes.
Can be for gesture for two, right? So yeah, they also how you show two, right? Whether you show it like that or you show it like that, right? In China, it says for number 8. Not sure if I cannot confirm that, but might be true. Or in Italy, it might be something good, right? So yeah, in Uzbekistan, I think also people don't like when somebody shows you like points at you like that, right? So it's also impolite, right? When you're pointing at someone, your finger, right? Yes, so yeah, the rest are just some other examples. But yeah, so these are the kind of main things that I wanted to mention. Let me go back to that summary. Yeah. So as we said, but not only words, what we say reflects culture, but how we say them also plays a role, right? So they are reflected in what was proxemics?
By spacing, space.
How much space we practice. Haptics.
Haptics, it's like by touching.
Touching, how much touching we're allowed to, yes. And then aculexics.
Eye contact.
Eye contact, using eyes, right?
Yes.
And yeah, and by the way, yeah, I read, like, for example, in China and Japan, so they close their eyes. That shows that I'm listening to you. You know, when you're saying so, they may close their eyes. That means like I'm kind of concentrating, you know. Whereas in other cultures, if they close their eyes, they might think they are sleeping, right? So they are so bored that they are not listening to you, right?
Yeah.
And kinesics is what?
With facial expression, non-verbal body motion, like this.
Gestures, right? Yes, gestures, right?
Gestures.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Any questions, comments?
No, thank you. It was interesting.
Yeah, really was interesting.
Thank you, my loyal students.
Just
Thank
enjoy it.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you so much.
every time we enjoy. Yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, me too. I enjoy talking to you as well. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Enjoy your, what's it, tomorrow? Yeah, enjoy your week, right? So yeah, have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night too. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
It was nice to see you today.
Thank you. Likewise. Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.